Hey, this is Matt Vojek, and this is the Creating Business Podcast. Each episode, I sit down and talk to a guest from the creative industries of advertising and marketing about work they've done for a business and their thought process behind all their decisions. By digging deep into projects and the decisions made, we unearth new insights and ideas about creating amazing work that moves the needle for businesses. This is the Creating Business Podcast. All right, so the project in question this week is the game of creativity. And for anybody that knows anything about that, I am the creator. So this podcast episode is going to be me just talking to myself. This sounds great, doesn't it? So diving in here, the game of creativity is a card game that I developed to basically help people that have creative blocks, or to help people kind of explore their own imagination to come up with a little bit more creative ideas than you might if you were to just go on Pinterest or search Google Images. Because honestly, I don't believe that that's real creativity. I think that that's something else. And I developed this product for people like myself that were running into these blocks and trying to come up with solutions better than just searching online for things. So to kind of go back a little bit, to the events leading up to the Game of Creativity releasing, so I also have another project called Making Midwest, and at the end of 2017, at the middle of 2017, we had the first conference of Making Midwest, an annual conference. Started off as a quarterly event type thing to get more creative people together. But anyway, so we had the first annual conference, which the third annual conference is going to be held this July 26th to 28th. You can get your tickets right now at makingmidwest.com. There's the little plug there. But anyway, after the first event, which was themed Creative Collisions, I guess to kind of tell you a little bit more about that, I wanted to get people together from many different creative industries and to basically see what happens when we start, having these people talk about what they know best and see how that collides with other creative industries, and see what kind of insights people can take by combining multiple ideas from separate people in different industries. Because that is what I believe creativity is. I believe it's this intersection of two unlike ideas. So I wanted to put together an event that was like that. And we had 33 people present over the course of 2 days at this first event. Everyone talked for about 20 minutes. Some people went over and it made things a little difficult, but so anyway, after the event, this was July of 2017, I still couldn't stop thinking about this idea of how do we help people be creative, right? I don't know, there's a lot of people out there that will, you can take little courses, or you can have a creative coach type people, or just kind of bouncing ideas off of other people. But for me at the time, that really wasn't much of an option. I'm trying to figure out how to be more creative by myself on a moment's notice, basically. And so another thing that I do is I journal every day. I've been doing it for the last probably 2 or maybe almost 3 years now. And I usually just write down the thoughts that I have that day. I actually have a 4-color pen. And so blue is what happened that day. Green is any questions that I have that I believe the answer could lead to something very big, whether that's creatively or family or personally. Black is my thoughts for that day, or the things that I was thinking about mostly that day. And red is my checklist of every day. And in this journal, I was trying to figure out this concept of like how can we help people be more creative, and I started making little boxes and putting like an object in those boxes, something like paint or animation or stop motion or fabric, cloth, paper, like just random objects. I started putting them in these little boxes on the paper, and then I started making lines going from one thing to another. And I started like, trying to think of like, okay, what does the intersection of these two things, like what's something creative that can come out of it? So over time, probably over a couple of months, I started kind of doing that more often as kind of a brainstorming activity, sort of. I mean, it's sort of like a word web kind of thing, like a word association type thing, but it had to lead to some sort of creative output. So it wasn't until I started with this idea probably August of 2017, and then in December of 2017, as a small business owner, there is a time of year where nobody is answering their emails or nobody's calling, and that's usually December, mid to late December. So I planned for 1 week. And in this week, I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to develop this idea. And basically what I did was I landed on the conclusion of, seeing these boxes that kind of look like cards. So I thought it'd be really fun to actually have cards, put a deck of cards together that, you flip over to, and then it helps you, have this sort of framework to be creative within. So in 1 week's time, I designed every single card. There's 50 cards that I was planning on doing, and I chose 50 because I used moo.com, which allows you to make business cards with 50 different backs on them. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to use business cards as kind of the prototype here. And and in that week I designed all 50 cards. I designed the back, had all the packaging for it, and found the domain name of the Game of Creativity. So that was what the game would be called. Once I designed it and I started kind of taking some photos, taking some video of it, kind of sharing it around to a couple of people, trying to figure out how to make it better and if it's something that's useful to other people, right? So at the end of December, I decided, I'm just going to run a Kickstarter. I found a company that'll do playing cards. And they would do like a minimum order of up to like 5 or 20 or something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but I decided that I would run some kind of fundraiser to see if people are interested enough to have me print these up, right? So I set the goal for the Kickstarter at $750. Again, this would, this is just to get like probably 20 to 50 of them printed. Whenever I launched it on Kickstarter, a few things happened. This was a really interesting 30-day period here. This is beginning of 2018. I believe it was February 1st where I finished the campaign and then I launched it on Kickstarter. I told a few people that I follow on Facebook and Instagram and stuff, expecting that maybe we get to the goal, but it's probably just going to be people that I know, people part of the Making Midwest community or people part of the Zweli audience that I already have. Something really interesting happened where in the first 24 hours, we met the goal already. So now I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Like, it wasn't, I thought it would take 30 days to get to $750. Again, I never had the idea to try to make money from this. I just wanted to see if it was something that was worth pursuing, really. So I did have a pretty low number on it. And so like I said, after 24 hours, we already met the goal. And at that point, I'm like, okay, well, now I guess I just develop some advertising, some content for it, and see kind of how far we can take it. And one of the plans for that was to do a press release and to contact other blogs that generally post creative news. And all I did was, I found some of the people to contact, and in the email I said, there's something wrong with there's something wrong with the creative industries right now, and I'm trying to fix it. That was kind of my subject or my main line there. And then I just left a link to the Kickstarter campaign. And by day 3, a site called Creative Block, BLOQ.com, they wrote a little story on this. And whenever they wrote a story on it, there's a few other companies that also wrote a story on this. And, I certainly wouldn't say it went viral, but it definitely kind of got out there really quickly. I got really lucky with how much people posted about it, and some of these bigger people with giant audiences just kept posting more and more about it, because they were super interested in the idea, and obviously so was I. So it was really cool to see kind of how this happened. And over the course of those 30 days, I made $32,000 from this campaign. I mean, a lot of that went to shipping and to actually get the initial inventory of the cards. But during the campaign, a few things that I ran into was, well, the company that I initially wanted to go through, well, theirs weren't as high quality as some other places. So in the middle of the campaign, I'm trying to find a new printer for these cards. So I had to go pretty silent and kind of focus all my energy on that rather than trying to push this campaign. So basically I had to go away from the company that I initially decided on going through and go through United States Playing Card Company, the bicycle card company, the people that make the normal poker cards, right? They do custom orders, but their minimums are, I think 1,000 was their minimum. And I had no intentions of getting 1,000 of these things made. But in the course of this campaign, I think I sold probably about 1,500 packs of these cards. So some of the challenging aspects of that was trying to quickly adapt to those expectations of, oh, okay, like at $750, people were just expecting like kind of just these card things. But like after getting to a certain amount, it's like, okay, well, now it's the expectation that these things are like great quality, right? So basically whatever I had to do during that campaign to try to figure that stuff out, that's what I did. I'd say that, so after about, once the campaign ended, I think it was probably 7 weeks, probably about 7 weeks after, where the cards arrived and we shipped out. I guess one other thing that kind of happened during this time to make it more challenging was that during this whole time, my wife was pregnant. And in probably, let's see here, I think early April, we could tell that maybe there could have been some problems with her pregnancy. And this was, I'm expecting this inventory to arrive and to ship out in the middle of April. So a little bit of a stressful time here. And it was April 11th where my daughter was born about, I can't remember exactly how early, but she was born about 6 weeks early, I want to say. When she was born, we discovered that she had a lot of problems, and problems that meant that she wouldn't live very long. And she ended up living for about 10 days. It was 10 days exactly. And during those 10 days, we spent a good chunk of our time at the children's hospital, just trying to understand what was going on with her and trying to get to know her, honestly. And I realize this might feel like it's kind of not exactly relevant, but it was really challenging to all of a sudden on April 21st, we're going back. On April 21st, we're going back home without this daughter that we already had her crib set up, we already had her room all set up, and we had to figure out how to kind of live with this, right? And also in this time, I also have these cards that are supposed to be here at any minute, and I'm supposed to be shipping these out with a smile on my face. And it was incredibly difficult. I'm pretty sure we started sending orders out April 28th, so it was about a week after. And me and my wife, we shipped out over 1,000 orders. It ended up being this kind of good experience for both of us. That, we're spending time together and talking through things, trying to understand what our new normal is in our family, but also packing these orders and trying to stay organized. And I don't know. I realize that these things seem kind of, may not seem relevant, but it was just a really interesting time in my life, I suppose, trying to handle grief, as well as this extreme happiness and extreme sadness at the exact same time. So anyway, after that point, we started selling the cards online. Basically, it turned itself into a business that I wasn't planning on, but a business that people were interested still. So I found myself keeping on developing and marketing and advertising to see again how far we can push a $750 idea, and to see kind of where it can go. Since then, it's been about a year now since we launched it on Kickstarter and started sending orders out, and actually just released pre-orders for Volume 2. So one of the things that I found while developing this game and kind of doing that general journaling idea that I had before, where I'm connecting unlike things, I realized that you need to have some sort of brief or problem that you're trying to solve before you do that. So that's what I'm doing with Volume 2. Is it's 56 cards that are all real world problems, with their sources attached to them. And the idea is that you flip over one of these problem cards, and then you flip over the ingredient cards, which is Volume 1, basically called those ingredient cards now, where you can flip over one, you can flip over two, and try to see how those one or two things can solve that one problem. And to me, again, that's where creativity really happens, is, where you kind of do some exploration of your own imagination to see what kind of ideas you can come up with. And again, it's not being afraid of bad ideas at the same time. So, overall, this is a game that can take you can play, again, by yourself for 5 minutes. You can just go through cards. You can go through 20 sets of cards and see what kind of good ideas you can come up with. But the best part is that it doesn't take very long, so there's a low risk of wasting time. Again, you flip over these cards, and then you think internally. You think write or draw. That's what I've basically been telling everybody. Where it's try to discover a small way of trying to solve this big problem, or a big way to solve this big problem. Based on the skill set that you have, it could be something like, you see the problem, and then you flip over the ingredient cards, and maybe you decide that you're going to start a little campaign or something like that of, how can we solve this problem? Make it 0.0001% better. And even if you can do that for a problem, that's still successful. And I think that's what I want people to know about Volume 2 especially, is, let's explore these giant ideas and try to just make them a little bit better, without the expectation of, completely solving a problem. It's just, let's make things better. So If you want to know more about the Game of Creativity, you can go to thegameofcreativity.com. That's it. That's all I got. And since I'm sitting here by myself talking about things, some of which being awfully personal, it seems kind of weird to me. So I'm going to do a little recap here. I think that one of the biggest things that I learned in this process is that a couple things. I guess one is that testing ideas can be quick. And your ideas don't have to be something that take years and years to develop. You can have a good idea that takes like 20 minutes to build. And if that's the case, that's great. Some ideas do take years to kind of have a minimum viable product, but some ideas take 20 minutes. In my case, it took, like I said, less than a week, less than 40 hours of designing and, obviously minus the time of journaling and stuff like that. So on the side, I was thinking about it for months and months, but I didn't actually start acting on it until, I only months later I started acting on it. And then again, it took me less than a week to develop, design and illustrate these cards and have a plan for them going forward. So I think one of my big things is that, like, if you have a good idea, or if you have any idea, it doesn't even have to be a good idea. It can be a good idea to you. The great thing about things like Kickstarter and crowdfunding is that you don't just raise money with it. You also find out what ideas are worth pursuing. So sometimes you might have an idea, and maybe it's something that costs a lot of money to be able to produce, or maybe it's something that's really cheap. Either way, you can do something on a platform like Kickstarter and see what the response is from people. If you don't get the money for it, if you don't get any money, if nobody contributes anything to the campaign, that's a pretty good, solid understanding that maybe this idea is just not very good. And maybe that sounds bad. And we can talk all day about perseverance and all that stuff, but for me specifically, I want to know if my ideas aren't that great as soon as I can, because I have a lot of other ideas. I can pursue a bunch of different things. I could not pursue a bunch of different things. So for me, it was always about, let's find the quickest way to put something out there to get honest feedback. Which kind of brings me to my next kind of recap point. And that is when people part ways with their money, there is nothing more, committing, where, people can say that, oh, this is a cool idea, this is great, and that's all great, you know what I mean? But when somebody actually parts ways with their money and gives you their money that they worked hard for something, to me, that's like the ultimate sign of a good idea, is if they are willing to go that far to actually give you money, then they really do think it's a good idea. They're not just saying it's a good idea. And I think that's something that's really important to kind of figure out and to understand, is that, like, some ideas might not cost you very much to produce. And if that's the case, you can put this thing out into the world for absolute free. And that, I think that's another kind of strategy here. For something like this, where this is a product that I had to actually pay for with my own money. And I just want to know if I'm going to part ways with my money, I want to make sure that I'm producing an idea that other people are willing to also do this for. And to me, there's this idea of, maybe it sounds bad, but I love making money. I love it whenever people are willing to give me money for something that I've done. And it has nothing to do with greed or anything like that, but it comes back to that idea that if people are giving me money for something, it means a few different things. One, that they really see this as a good idea. And to me, that's what this is all about, is trying to produce the best ideas you possibly can. And if people are willing to pay for it, then you know that the idea is great, and you just need to kind of keep pushing from there. I think my third recap point here is to kind of stay open to things that can happen, right? sometimes things will happen by complete accident. I don't know. I guess I don't want to say that because I intentionally made a product, but I didn't think that it was going to kind of go as big as it did. But whenever I started seeing that, I quickly adapted to, okay, this is no longer just a $750 side project. This is a business. So again, in that time, I had to switch the quality. I also, in that time, started a business, started an LLC. I had to quickly adapt. I also, after the campaign ended, I needed a way to launch pre-orders until the cards came in. So I needed to keep sales kind of flowing in because I don't want to lose that momentum. So I immediately got a Shopify account. And that's even still to this day how I still sell the cards. But, again, this turned into a business. And I wouldn't have done that if I just wanted this to be like a Kickstarter just to see if this was a decent idea. I could have easily stopped right there. But I think that, for me anyway, it was as soon as I saw the response from people, it was like, okay, I need to keep this going. No matter what I do, I need to find the time to kind of keep developing this. And it's not my full-time job, but at the same time, it is something that is pretty regularly on my mind is to kind of how to keep developing things for people. Keep developing, I guess, keep in mind of how we want to help people be more creative. Because that is the mission of the company is how do we keep building things that help people internally explore their own imagination and to develop creative ideas. And it goes back to that initial idea of like, I personally don't want people to just keep looking on Pinterest for their ideas all the time. I'm so tired of seeing people. So I also teach at Columbus College of Art and Design, and I teach motion graphics there. And as a teacher, I see how students are inspired by their work and how they're coming to, the final product of what they make. And a big thing of what they do especially at a younger age is they're going on Pinterest and seeing something that other people made, and they're like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna do something in that style. Now, it's not plagiarism, but it's dangerously close sometimes. And sometimes it actually is plagiarism. And that's just a whole other story that I'm not gonna talk about. But basically, it's as long as, this business, it's not about making cards. It's about helping people with their creativity. And I think that's a big thing for me every single day is, are we helping people be more creative, or are we just selling a normal a random deck of card kind of thing, like a gimmicky novelty thing? And to some people it might be that, but to me it's not. It is a way of thinking that makes you uncomfortable, that gets you completely away from how you normally think of things. And to me, I think that's the most important thing it's been the most rewarding thing of what I've done with the game of creativity. So that's all I got. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, hopefully I'm not talking about myself every single episode here. Hoping to get a lot more people on here. I have probably 3 or 4 different people lined up for the future of the next few weeks. Actually, I had somebody just cancel, and that's why I decided, hey, I have everything set up, so I might as well talk about the game of creativity. Again, hope you liked it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.